Grade 12 Economics. Good afternoon. I'm Mr. Mhlongo and back here with you today on our revision for the paper 1, Economics. Remember, this lesson is brought to you by Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with Cybono Discovery. So today we're here for tomorrow. The main reason for being here today is to prepare for tomorrow and guide on how you can answer some questions as you will be writing your paper 1 for economics tomorrow on the 11th of September. Remember, your paper will be in the morning, which is the first session, so do not miss out. Our preparatory examination for paper 1 include 2 major topics, namely macroeconomics and economic pursuits. So this lesson is not here to give you what will be in the examination, but it's here to give you the guideline on how you will have to respond in some of the questions, and also giving you the training that is relevant for you to be able to achieve your marks that you have planned to achieve. Then we'll make some examples from section A to section C, showing you how you can respond to questions of that particular section. So please follow me and see what I have in the pocket for you. Lesson objectives, they are very clear. The lesson is mainly here to ensure that it trains you so that you can easily approach the question paper for tomorrow, which is paper 1. It provides some examples as guidelines to approach different questions in all sections of the question paper. So our revision is for paper 1 preparatory exam. The date will be tomorrow, the 11th of September, 2025. I think I'm going back here. And then let's check mark allocation per chapter. This one is very important for you. So this is simply the beginning or the starting of the training that will be guiding you what you can expect. Gauteng Preparatory Examination 2025, Macroeconomics. We have question 1. Macro has 15 marks. Question 2, it has 40 marks, which is your section B. Question 4 is 20 marks, meaning it's half. And then question 5 is 40 marks. Economic pursuits. Question 1 is 15 marks. Question 3 is 40 marks. Question 4 is 20 marks. Question 6 is 40 marks. What does this mean to you? It simply tells you that in your macro, you don't have question 3. You don't have question 6. Those are economic pursuit questions. And in your pursuit, you don't have question 2. You don't have question 5. So question 4 is common. If you can check, question 4 is being common here. Question 4 is the combination of both macroeconomics and economic pursuit. 20 marks, that gives you 40. Question 1 is also common because in macroeconomics, you have 15 marks that you will be working for. In economic pursuit, you also have 15 marks. That gives you 30. And then the structure of the question paper. For paper 1, we are here for now. You can expect the following: 150 marks for 2 hours. And then the first main topic is macroeconomics with circular flow, business cycles, public sector, and the foreign exchange markets. Remember, questions have been allocated. So all of these, there will be 15 marks for what do you call it? 15 for section A or question 1, 40 for question 2, and then 20 for question 4, and 40 for question 5. And then you go down to economic pursuits. The protectionism and free trade is a part of pursuits. Economic growth and development, economic pursuits. Industrial development policy or regional development, as well as economic and social indicators. These 4 will be found in your question 1 for 15 marks, question 3 for 40 marks, question 4 for 20 marks, question 6 for 40 marks. Remember, you have a choice here. You choose questions based on your level of understanding and your preparation. Section A and B, topics distribution. Let's check question 1. We have macroeconomics and economic pursuits. Remember, in your question 1, it's out of 30 marks. Then topics you can expect for macro. You have circular flow. You have business cycles. We have public sector, as well as the foreign exchange markets. And then your question 1 also for pursuits, protectionism and free trade, economic growth and development, regional development or industrial development, as well as indicators, mainly both social and economic indicators. In your question 2, these are mainly topics you can prepare. Macroeconomics, circular flow, business cycles, public sector, and the foreign exchange markets. In your question 3, protectionism and free trade, economic growth and development, regional development, and economic and social indicators. And then question 4 is the combination of both macroeconomics as well as economic pursuits. That's how you need to prepare. You go there, you know your strength and your weaknesses. So your planning must be according to your strength and your weaknesses. Detail of the question paper. Each paper carries 150 marks. So our paper for tomorrow is 150 marks. Duration is 2 hours. You need to be very much efficient as you write or as you answer your questions in the question paper, so that you can complete your paper on time. Each paper comprises of 6 questions divided into 3 sections, namely section A, section B, and section C. So remember that section A is compulsory for 30 marks. You need to ensure that you get those easy marks. Do not guess answers in there. I will give you training shortly. Section B, there are 3 questions. You don't answer all questions. You answer only 2 out of 3. That is question 2, question 3, and question 4. So you have to choose only 2 out of 3. Don't answer everything, because one of them won't be marked. Section C consists of 2 questions, which is question 4, 5 and question 6. You answer only 1 question. Between macroeconomics or economic pursuit, you choose one of the 2. And then section A layout, it is compulsory. Firstly, we have 1.1, which is the lower order responses. It's a multiple choice. You choose the given, you are given the statement and 4 options in terms of A, B, C, and D. You choose the correct answer in terms of the letter. So with the possible 4 options per the main topic, 8 marks, then it gives you 16 marks. Matching items is 1.2. It's a lower order also. I will give you training on how to answer that part of the question. And then 1.3, you are given the term is lower order also. So in there, you are given the definitions or descriptions, you give the term. All in all, you get your 30 marks, which is very important for you to boost your confidence and ensure that you get the marks that you think you deserve. Percentage contribution per section. Section A has 30 marks. It contributes about 20% in your examination question paper. Section B, where you answer 2 questions, between 2, 3, and 4 questions, it contributes about 53.3%. Remember, it's out of 80 marks. And then section C, you choose one of the 2 given essays between macro and pursuits. Question 5 and question 6, it's 40 marks. It contributes about 26.7%. So it is important for you to know that all sections are important. You don't have just to focus on section C or section A and leave other sections. They're all important as they contribute towards you achieving your main goal. What is the problem that we are having in economics? Candidates lack skills to approach the question paper. How can you solve that issue? You choose questions in section B and section C based on possible marks that you think you can obtain. But you don't follow your friends as they choose. There's not even time to see what they choose, by the way. You choose according to your strength. As you are given 10 minutes reading time, you check questions that you think will be appropriate for you to answer. And then you do what we call an opportunity cost to check which one will give you more marks than the other one. Then you choose those questions that will be giving you more score sheet in terms of section C as well as section B. Another problem, candidates ignore section A and forfeit easy marks. So what is that we can do? You know that you ignore section A, you guess when you get in there, you bring those B, C, which is appropriate. I mean, not appropriate. So it is important to ensure that you don't guess in section A, understand the question statement and link them to the given options. And then the third problem here is that candidates are unable to link concepts in application questions. So the questions like higher order questions, additional part, and then also the question like 2.1.2, 3.1.2, 4.1.2, you find it difficult to link in there because you don't follow the question statement to understand what is actually required. So it is important for you to develop your skills. So understanding is a key on application questions. Answer without repeating the question. Ensure that as you answer, you don't repeat the question statement and then you answer according to the question. Understand the concept in that there will be some example provided to show you how you can answer the question of that nature. Then another problem here, candidates lack the skills to take advantage of section C. We have a challenge of learners or candidates that are simply answering sections that have not even been questioned. You bring even your own additional part, which is a challenge because you get 0. So the solution can be know where your strength is between macroeconomics and economic pursuits. And then essays are fixed, so know them from listing subheadings, descriptions, and discussions. How can you really answer the question, the essay easily? Know, firstly, the headings and subheadings. Then, on top of that, be able to give the description or definition for each subheading. That will give you something more than 20 marks. And then you can add on discussion. If you don't know subheadings, you will never be able to write an essay because you will be mixing things that are even irrelevant. But subheadings give you the structure and the layout in which you can answer that particular essay. So remember, in macroeconomics, we have about 12 essays, 12 to 13. So it is important for you to have a stand. Know your strongest point. If you choose macro essays, know all of those 6 essays for macroeconomics. If you choose pursuit essays, know all of those 6 essays for economic pursuits. So we have been doing that from term 1 until today. So please ensure that as you approach the question paper, you know your strength. Do according to your strongest point. Then you can choose the question that really suits you, unless then you are good in all sides. Multiple choice section A. So you need to read statement with understanding and try to derive the answer before looking at the given options. As you read the statement, provoke yourself to give you the answer. Provoke your mind to give you the answer. Then you look for the answer and you grab it down there. Classify the given options. Remember that 2 options are from the relevant content while the other 2 are wrong. You then choose the correct answer between 2 relevant answers. So in there we are given 4 options between A, B, C, and D. So obviously 3 answers are wrong. There's 1 answer that is absolutely correct. Try to relate. Read the statement and understand which context is it. And then you relate. After that, you go and choose the answer after provoking your mind to give you the answer before looking at the given options. Things will be more easier for you in that case. Avoid leaving spaces with the hope of returning at a later stage. Whenever you answer, just try to ensure that you answer. Do not leave spaces, because as you leave spaces in 1.1, you might forget to come back and then you forfeit 2 marks. It is important that you do not guess an answer without doing a depth analysis on the given options and the given statement. Do not guess, because as you guess, you might be endangered. You might even get 0 if you are guessing. Ensure that you understand the question statement, understand given options, relate them, link them, and get the answer correct. 1.2 matching items. So there are different ways to approach 1.2. You either look at column A and try to define those concepts without looking at column B, or look at column B, read them all, provoke the concept for them. So look at the column A concept and try to derive the answer before looking at the column B descriptions. Then match the correct answer. And then use elimination method by matching answers that you are sure they are correct. Start with what you are sure is correct. Because the danger here is getting 1 answer wrong might mean you are getting 2 answers wrong. Getting 2 answers wrong might mean you are getting already 4 answers wrong. So it is important for you to ensure that as you do this in 1.2, you become more careful, because if ever you choose the wrong answer, it happens that that answer belongs to a certain number, meaning that now you have 2 answers wrong. So it is important that you start by using elimination method. Ensure that you answer on what you know first, from 1.2.1 to 1.2.8. Then go back again now to double check and make some relevant choices. Then look at answers that are confusing you. Do not guess yet. Relate and make sense. Find commonality between column A and column B on the remaining options. After eliminating, you surely have few options remaining. Relate again until you have 1 column B response remaining, which is expected to be wrong. It is important to remember that it is highly possible that choosing 1 wrong answer in this part result to 2 answers being wrong. So you can go to the point of getting 0/8. While 1.2 is one of the easiest questions in our section A. Do not leave any question or option unmatched in column A with column B. We continue. 1.3, give the concept. Know your terminology per topic. It is very important that you use your mind gap to understand terminologies, be able to define them. That will give you a better opportunity to obtain 30 marks in your entire section A. Understand each section before writing the answer. It is important that you understand that particular description given to you before you give an answer, because if you give an answer without understanding, the answer will be automatically wrong. Use the DBE study guide, Mind the Gap, terminology per topic. That will guide you easily to ensure that you obtain what you want to achieve. Do not leave any question unanswered, and do not comply. Remember, if you are complying, you bring any answer that you think is relevant to economics. Interact vigorously or carefully, as also seriously, with each description. Do not just read to pass. Read with understanding so that you can remember which concept is being defined or described in that particular question. Remember that abbreviations, examples, and acronyms are not accepted in this part of section A 1.3. We don't accept abbreviations. If you bring abbreviation, even if it's relevant according to the question, it won't be marked correct, because we don't accept abbreviation as well as acronyms. We also don't accept examples. Section B, approach. How can you easily approach section B? Answer 2 questions between question 2, 3, and 4. That is very important. Use the 10 minutes given time to make profitable choices, and choose questions that will give you more marks. As you are given that 10 minutes, ensure that you calculate marks that you are sure you will get between question 2, question 3, and question 4. Then you make a relevant choice that will be profitable to yourself. Read each question with understanding before attempting to answer, from question 2, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, and 2.5 to question 3 to question 4. Read data response with understanding while highlighting important information. Contextualize it. It is very important that if you are given data response, you interpret data response. You don't just go to answer questions. Contextualize the data response given to you. If you are given the extract or cartoon, contextualize, make it to be relevant to the particular topic. From then, you can simply remember the whole content relevant to that particular topic. Then you can go to questions. Improve your ability to link, because the question paper requires the most of linking and application. Our question papers lately are not about listing or mentioning or defining. They really mix everything. You must be able to link. So if you cannot apply your content to the existing world, it will become more difficult for you to be able to get marks in our question paper for paper 1 or even paper 2. Be smart when answering application questions. It is important that when you're answering application questions, you understand and look at the mark allocation. Let mark allocation tells you on the time that you should spend on each question in there. Do not spend about 5 minutes on the question for 2 marks. No, don't do that. Ensure that the time spent on the question is informed by the marks that are given to you in that particular question. Answer in full sentences on questions that require explanation or a brief description or discussion. It is important that if ever the question is 2 marks, you answer in full sentence. If the question is 4 marks, you answer in full sentences. Remember, if it's 4 marks, that means you have to provide 2 answers. Each answer is 2 marks. That will be giving you 4 marks. So you bring those answers in full sentences. If you provide the fact, you can't just provide the fact alone. There must be a fact and the effect of the fact as you apply, so that you can be able to get your 4 marks. If it's 8 marks question, it is important that you ensure that as you answer in full sentences. If it's 8 marks, we expect the minimum of 4 facts in full sentences. If it's 10 marks for maybe additional part, we expect the minimum of 5 facts in full sentences. Then you can go further. But it is important that as you answer you be broad, answer in full sentences, so that you can obtain required marks. Because at times you will think you are answering in full while you are listing, and listing here will make you forfeit marks. I will explain as per section or as per question. Let mark allocation determine time you can spend on each sub-question. Avoid leaving blank spaces in section A. And then avoid answering all 3 questions in section B. And then avoid answering both questions in section C, because that will be creating the extra information that is not relevant and required. Because as we are given options to choose, if you choose question 2, 3, and 4 in section B, that means the marker will mark question 2 and 3. Question 4 you will forfeit marks. It won't be considered. Even if question 2 is wrong, question 4 is correct, question 4 is not going to be marked, because you have given extra information. So ensure that you understand instructions as they are given to you and answer according to the instructions. Be able to analyze and interpret graphs, cartoons, extracts, and data in section B, data response. It is important that you interact with data response before you go to questions. Given data, try to read with understanding, highlight basic information that is relevant. If you are given the cartoon or given maybe the table with numbers, highlight those numbers that you think they are relevant, and then contextualize it. Then you can go to questions, try to answer those questions. And then this is the beginning of the practice. Immediately order questions. This requires you to explain. How does increase in taxes affect the economy? So let's check. It's a how question. How does the increase, that is action verb, increase in what? In taxes affecting what? Economy. You need to link the tax increase with the economy. So we know that if tax increases, that might affect economy negatively because there will be less disposable income and less demand for goods and services. But it can also benefit the economy in the long run because as taxes increase, if there is no tax evasion, the government might receive more tax revenues, which might lead to the government spending further in the economy in the near future, which will improve economic activities as well as the multiplier. An increase in taxes is detrimental to the economy. It decreases the level of spending and result in low production and economic growth. Whenever taxes are too high, there might be less income available in the economy for spending. Then that will lead to less demand for goods and services, which will be decreasing the economy. Increased taxes can increase state revenues. So government revenues can be increased, which can be used to finance national budget and improve economic activities. Like I've mentioned, in the long run, as taxes increase while there's no tax evasion, there can be more revenues or tax revenues earned by the government, which can really result in more spending in the future and increase the multiplier effect. High corporate tax or business tax or company tax increases the cost of doing the business, and it discourages investors or business into the country's economy. If ever company tax is too high, businesses will be discouraged from investing in the country's economy, which will lead to what? Less investors and less economic activities. We continue with the immediate order. What impact does high savings have on the size of the multiplier? Now we are going straight to the multiplier. If ever savings are too high, how does that affect the size of the multiplier? We know that savings decrease the size of the multiplier. Actually, all leakages has a bad effect on the multiplier. For instance, we talk about savings, talk about taxation, we talk about import or payment for imports. They have a bad impact on the multiplier. The marginal rate to import can decrease the size of the multiplier. High savings also lower the size of the multiplier. Taxes also lower the size of the multiplier. So high level of savings withdraw money from the circulation. It decreases the level of spending and result in low size of the multiplier. Why are assets subtracted in the balance of payments? So we go straight to the BOP foreign exchange markets now. Remember, when we are dealing with the capital transfer account and financial account, we deal with assets and liabilities. So we normally subtract assets and add liabilities. So why are the assets subtracted on the BOP? Remember, in this situation, we call them negative assets. They are subtracted because they result to the outflow of money from the country's economy. But as we subtract them, we call them assets because the future gain of that particular amount that was invested abroad will benefit the country in the near future. So let's check. Assets are subtracted in the balance of payments account because they are the outflow from the domestic economy. Money flows out of the economy because of those assets as they go out. For instance, if ever as a country we are investing on buying the company abroad, the money will be flowing out, but that money will be recorded negatively as a negative asset. Why we call it a negative asset? Because it will be accumulative. Remember, assets are accumulative. As it goes out, it is going there to accumulate even more money, and that money will be enjoyed back in the country in future. So we call it a negative asset, but it will accumulate more wealth for the nation, which will be enjoyed in future back in the country. How can the appreciated exchange rate affect terms of trade? So now we are still in the same topic, which is what we call the foreign exchange market. If ever the exchange rate has appreciated, how can that affect the TOTs? Remember, terms of trade refer to the index of export prices to the index of import prices. So as we experience appreciation in the currency, that simply means our export will appear relatively expensive abroad, which will be increasing our terms of trade for the short run in case our exports are demand elastic. But if our exports are not demand elastic or are demand inelastic, then they will keep on increasing terms of trade. If ever the currency appreciates, terms of trade will always be increasing because our goods won't be replaceable easily abroad. They won't be having perfect substitutes. The appreciated exchange rate increases terms of trade in the short run because it makes exports expensive, which increase the export earnings. So as we sell our goods abroad, they will be expensive. Then there will be more income received from those exports. That will be increasing our terms of trade. Why is it necessary for the country to analyze a balance of payments? Then we are still on the foreign exchange market. Remember, if we talk of BOP, we refer to the systematically book of record that keep all transactions of the country international. Whenever the country is trading with other countries, those transactions are recorded under the balance of payment that can be separated into the current account, capital transfer account, as well as the financial account. So why is it important for the country to analyze? Remember, we analyze BOP so that we can understand and know how competitive is the country internationally. Are we competitive abroad or we are less competitive? So it helps the country discover differences between inflows and outflows. If we don't analyze BOP, we will never discover if inflows are more than outflows or outflows of the currency are more than the inflows. And that it is helpful to measure the country's international competitiveness. So we'll be able to discover if the country is competitive or not competitive abroad. So it's also important for that reason. Analyzing balance of payments enables the country to use necessary measures such as borrowings if there is a BOP deficit. Remember, a country can be able to borrow from IMF, which is known as International Monetary Fund. If ever the country is a member country into IMF, it can borrow money so that it can finance its own BOP deficit. So having to analyze help the country to be able to apply for funding or special drawing rights from IMF so that it can be able to finance its, can finance its BOP, support exports so that there will be reduced BOP deficit. What impact does the increase in demand for the currency has on its value? Whenever the currency is excessively demanded, how does that affect its value? Obviously, the currency will depreciate because there will be excess demand. Let's check. The increase in demand for a currency more than the supply is regarded as an excess demand. So it leads to the currency depreciating or losing its value. How can interest rate be used to strengthen an undervalued currency? So interest rate now, how can we use interest rate to strengthen an undervalued? If the currency is undervalued, that means it is weaker than expected. You find that the rand is costing 22 rand to the US dollar instead of costing about 17 rand to US dollar. So that means our currency is undervalued in that situation. So how can the Reserve Bank use interest rates or repo rate to strengthen the undervalued currency? So the Reserve Bank can decrease interest rate to decrease the demand for domestic currency. Foreign indirect investors will be discouraged from investing if less returns are obtainable. Here we are talking about those that invest on buying shares in South Africa. If ever we lower interest rate, that means their returns are also going to decrease. So they will be discouraged from investing in South Africa, meaning they will be demanding less South African rand, which will then try to reduce the depreciation on our currency. Then we continue. How can the increase in infrastructural services or cost hamper economic growth? If ever the cost of the infrastructure, here we are on the business cycle under supply side policies as for economic paradigm. So if ever the cost of infrastructure increases, that hampers the growth of businesses. How? High infrastructure cost, such as transport, energy, and communication, increase the business cost. This decreases the production, the supply of goods and services, real GDP, as well as the entire economic growth. If ever firms are producing at the higher cost, they will be producing less goods and services, which will be decreasing their productivity and also decrease their economic growth. GDP of the country will also be compromised because firms are producing relatively less. Why is employment regarded as a pro-cyclic economic indicator? Remember, under indicators we have pro-cyclic and counter-cyclic indicators. If we talk about the pro-cyclic indicators, we refer to indicators that are in proportion to economic performance. As those indicators increase, economic performance also increase. So employment is one of the pro-cyclic. If we talk about the counter-cyclic indicators, we refer to those indicators that are not in proportion to economic performance. As that indicator increases, economic activities will be decreasing. Employment is in proportion to economic performance. The increase in employment increases economy, while the decrease in employment decreases the economy. So also the money supply is also pro-cyclic because as money supply increases, economic activity also increases. But what about inflation? Inflation is a counter-cyclic economic indicator because if inflation increases, economic activities decrease. Productivity is counter-cyclic because as productivity decreases, or is pro-cyclic, I mean, because as productivity decreases, economic activities also decrease. As productivity increases, economy also increases. So productivity becomes pro-cyclic as an economic indicator. Why can protectionism policy promote economic efficiency? Remember, if we talk about protectionism, we are back now to protectionism and free trade topic in there under economic pursuit. If ever we implement the policy of protectionism, what do we mean by that? We mean the use of policies to protect local industries against the foreign unfair competition. So the question is, How can it promote economic efficiency? Protectionism, or the protection of domestic industries against unfair foreign competition, decreases goods and services, limits consumer choice, and promote prices that are not competitive. So it promotes inefficiency. By the way, I read the question wrongly. So it results to economic inefficiency because as the country try to protect local industries, they become less innovative and less creative. They produce poor quality of goods and services because they are protected by the government, which will then compromise consumer choice and compromise the quality of goods and services. Less goods will be made available in South African economy. So that will be leading to economic inefficiency. Why are the current special economic zones seen as an improvement of existing industrial development zones? Remember, now we are on what we call regional development, where we talk about SEZ and ITZ. Remember, special economic zones are having the bigger scope compared to the ITZ. SEZ provide a variety of incentives that can assist both small businesses, exporting businesses, and locally based businesses, while ITZs mainly attract exporting businesses, mainly attract businesses that are willing to produce goods for the foreign markets. And then ITZ can only be located nearby seaports and airports, while SEZ can be located anywhere in the country. So special economic zones offer a wide range of incentive to attract both locally based businesses and exporting businesses, and they can be located anywhere in the country, while industrial development zones only attract exporting businesses and can be located nearby ports, which can be seaports and airports. Then we continue. Why is it important for South Africa to comply with international benchmarks when compiling economic indicators? Now we are on economic and social indicators. Why should South Africa comply with international regulations when compiling those indicators? So South Africa can easily be compared to other countries based on economic performance. So we need to comply with the country so that we can easily be compared to other world countries when they compile indicators. We are talking about having to adhere to regulations by International Monetary Fund, World Bank, as well as United Nations, to ensure international standardization so that organizations like IMF can intervene to help with the finances to reduce BOP disequilibrium. What impact does the medium-term expenditure framework, MTEF, have on the public sector? Here we are on the public sector now. So what impact does MTEF has on the public sector? So remember, MTEF, here we are all about the projection of income and expenditure for the period of 3 years. So MTEF improved public sector planning since income and expenditure is projected for the period of 3 years rolling. All government departments plan for the long term than the short term. So this MTF is very important for the government because it allows them to plan on time or plan in prior. If ever the planning was wrong, they can still change it along the way. So also, as we have MTEF, it allows for the government to allocate funds accordingly because MTEF gives them enough time to look at their main budget. They look at MTEF, then we have MTPPS that will inform what you call the main budget. So it helps a lot to ensure that our budget is more efficient because more time frame is given to departments to plan their spending, which is projected for the period of 3 years. Then we move to the gender response questions. Here we have the multiplier. Remember, before I start with the multiplier, the way of questioning on the multiplier has changed. It's no longer the same. We are shifting from the traditional way of questioning to the newest ways of questioning. Remember, traditionally, you were used to be asked to calculate the multiplier. But now, they are running away from asking that calculation, even though it's still there. But you will have to be able at times to calculate the multiplier effect, but they don't say calculate the multiplier effect. They want you to calculate the change in aggregate national income from maybe this Y to Y1, given these consumption functions. So it is important that you change with times. Whatever that have been brought on in your revision, move with it. Remember, term 1 for your project, you're given something else to do. Term 1 also in your control test, there was something else to calculate. You were not required to calculate the multiplier value. You were required to calculate the change in aggregate national income. Having to understand the value of the multiplier first and understanding the value of the investment within the economy. So it is important that you understand that and also prepare yourself accordingly. So in this graph, you are given the multiplier diagram on your vertical axis, you have your expenditure, and on your horizontal, you have your level of income. And then you have your autonomous spending, which then is about 10 million. Then there is investment line, which says consumption function is 0 equal to 10 plus 0.5y. This simply means that on this investment of 10 million, we will be spending half of it. And then there's further injection of 30 million, where we say consumption function E1 equal to 30 plus 0.5y, which means on the given expenditure or investment of 30 million, we will be spending half of it. And then along the 45-degree line, which is here, we say expenditure equal to income or income equals to expenditure. This gives you original equilibrium and the new equilibrium. So this one indicates injection in the economy. It's not the withdrawal or leakage. There's an injection, there's a further investment. That's why you see this investment line moving up from 10 to 40. So let's check. Here, normally in grade 12, we are dealing with 2-sector model multiplier. No 3-sector, no 4-sector model, because we are only dealing with the business sector and the household sector. Let's look at questions. Identify original consumption function on the graph. It was given E0 equal to 10 plus 0.5y. That's your consumption function. But the examiner can also ask you to identify the value of MPC, which is 0.5. So there you go. Give the marginal propensity to consume MPC from the graph above. That is 0.5. There is your MPC. This 0.5 indicates to you how much will be consumed on the given investment of 10 million. Briefly describe the term induced consumption. Remember, if you talk about the induced consumption, automatically you must remember also what you call the autonomous consumption. If induced consumption refers to the consumption that is dependent on income, that simply means it cannot happen if level of income is 0. So induced consumption is consumption that depends on the level of income, cannot happen if the income is 0. But autonomous expenditure or consumption refer to the consumption that is dependent, that is independent of income. It can happen even if level of income is 0. So how does the increase in marginal rate to tax MRT influence the value of the multiplier? So now we are checking the link between taxation and the multiplier. As MRT increases, marginal rate to tax, the value of the multiplier will be decreasing because the money will be withdrawn from the circulation. If ever you tax a certain income, you withdraw money from the circulation, which will then lead to less consumption or less spending. Let's check. It will decrease the value of the multiplier due to decrease in the marginal propensity to consume. As the money or the income is taxed, the MPC will automatically be decreasing as MRT is increasing. So MRT decrease, MPC decrease as MRT increase because the level of income available after being taxed, a certain portion can be saved, a certain portion can be consumed. That will lower the size of the multiplier. Using the formula change in income divided by change in injection, calculate the value of the multiplier from the above diagram. Show all calculations. Here we are not using the formula of K equal to 1 over 1 minus MPC or K equal to 1 over MPS. We are using the change in income divided by the change in injection. So let's check. You have your income, this side. This side we have your injection, this side. So we need to check now. Your change in income. So you need to show all steps. So change in income over change in change, we say 60 multiplied by 20. 60 multiplied by 20 divided by 30 minus 10. This 30 minus this 10. So what do you get? You get 40 over 20, and then that gives you 2. It's 2 indeed, because if you can check your consumption function and prove it if it's correct or wrong, you are given MPC, which is 0.5. So as you calculate or multiply using this 0.5, you will also get 2. So it's been proven the answer is correct. We continue. We are still on macroeconomics. That is our Phillips curve. So here, remember, the Phillips curve is the curve that illustrates the relationship between unemployment rate and inflation rate. So on our horizontal axis, we have our unemployment rate. Vertical, we have our inflation rate. There is point D there that indicates the natural unemployment. And then we also have point F, which indicates another natural unemployment. And then point C is showing us that as unemployment decreases from 40 to 30, inflation starts to increase because people start to have income and demand goods and services. Then if unemployment decreases further from 30% to 20%, that is point B, inflation rate will be increasing from 3% to 6%. So that simply means as unemployment rate is 20%, employment rate is 80%. So there is more income available in the economy because as employment increases, there will be more disposable income and more demand for goods and services. If ever goods are highly demanded while there's a lower supply, that can cause this increase in inflation. So we have PC1 here, which is our original Phillips curve, and then there's an arrow indicating the backward shift of the PC Phillips curve, the new Phillips curve to PC1. Why are we having the backward shift? Why does the Phillips curve shift? The shift is caused by the improvement of supply side policies, such as improvement of human resource development that include education and healthcare services. Identify any one point in the graph that shows natural unemployment. Point D and point F are both indicating natural unemployment. And then name the business cycle turning point during which inflation is often at the highest. That's our peak, because remember, at peak we say economy is overheating. So at peak, economy is overheating in a way that there's more money chasing few goods. So consumers are demanding more than what can be supplied by firms. As firms are supplying relatively less, they are doing that because they are faced by supply challenges or supply constraints. At peak of prosperity, firms have exhausted all of their factors of production. They cannot produce anything even further. So for that reason, there will be an inflation because there will be more money available to chase few goods, meaning supply won't be responding to the change in demand. That will be causing the demand pull inflation. And then briefly describe the term business cycle. That one is normal and simple for you. Business cycle is referred to the decrease and increase in economic activities, or fluctuation of economic activities, or upswings and downswings, or expansion and contraction of economic activities over a period of time. We continue. Explain the reason for the curve, for the shift of the Phillips curve from PC to PC1. Then implementing supply side policies. Improving labor skills and productivity through better education and training. Why is the relationship between inflation and unemployment regarded as negative? Use the information on the graph to motivate your answer. You are not just responding, you respond based on the graph that is given to you. Then we check. When the rate of unemployment decreases, the rate of inflation increases. When the unemployment increases, inflation decreases. So on the PC curve, when the unemployment is low at 10%, the rate of inflation is at the highest, which is 9%. When the rate of unemployment increases to 20%, inflation rate decreases to 6%. Then that indicates an inverse or negative relationship between unemployment and inflation. Let's go back then. So it is negative, theoretically, it is negative again, besides looking at the graph. Because as unemployment decreases, maybe from 14% to 10%, employment increase. Remember, employment increase together with the increase in income. As employment increase, disposable income will be increasing in the economy and lead to people or consumers demanding relatively more goods and services. And that will be causing an inflation. Then for that reason, we have an inverse or the negative relationship between inflation and unemployment. Data response, economic pursuits. Here you are given an economic indicator that talks about health and nutrition. You can see I'm hungry. There's an empty plate in there. So this simply indicates that there's high level of poverty, and there's also what we call a malnutrition in this situation. Then which type of social indicator is depicted in the picture above? Nutrition, health, and malnutrition, health, and nutrition. Identify the child malnutrition I illustrated in the picture above. Weight for age or underweight. You can see that the child that is indicated there is underweight. So briefly describe the term infant mortality. Infant mortality refers to the measure of the number of infants who die before the age of 1. Remember, we also have what we call infant mortality rate. So do not confuse infant mortality and infant mortality rate. It normally comes in your 1.3 as a definition, where you need to indicate the rate. So it can be, if it's 1.3, maybe the rate of children that die before reaching 1 year. That's an infant mortality rate. If you say infant mortality, you might not be scored. You might get 0 for that one, but indicating the rate because definition started with the rate. So be able to give the difference between the two. Why is obesity in children associated with other diseases? Remember, if a child is obese, that means the child is overweight. So remember, if ever the child is overweight, that is associated with many diseases that include high blood pressure, diabetes, etc. So being overweight or obese in early childhood increase the risk for an adult obesity and is associated with health conditions like heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, as well as osteoporosis. So in this case, if ever you are obese, that simply means it will be difficult for you really to maintain all of those health indicators. You find yourself not functioning very well, which will be attracting the diseases like being having high blood pressure. It's very common. Being diabetic is also common. That's why, as for our indicators for health, we are against the obesity because it attracts so many unnecessary diseases to an individual. What impact can poor service delivery has on the well-being of people? If ever there are poor services, we are still on what we call services as a part of social indicators. So poor service delivery negatively affect the enhancements of citizens' standard of living as well as their economic and social development. Poor access to electricity for electrical appliances usage reduces chances of being technologically advanced. Poor access to clean running water increases the likelihood of human beings suffering from diseases such as cholera, malaria, as well as other related diseases. So if ever there are poor services being provided, that can lead to poor living standard within the society. Then we move to 8 marks questions. So how to score marks in this 8 marks question? 2.4, 3.4, 4.4. You need to know your content because this question are just content knowledge, which is available in your learning aids. So these answers can be found in your textbook. Be smart when answering. Use point form, but answer in full sentences. Give the minimum of 4 full sentences to get full marks. Mere listing of facts and examples will give you maximum of 4 marks in 2.4, 3.4, and 4.4. 2.5, 3.5, and 4.5, these are higher order questions. You must be able to apply the content knowledge to the existing world. Critical thinking is a key is the key to answer these questions since they need most of evaluation and application. Mere listing of facts and example will give you maximum of 2 marks in these 2.5, 3.5, as well as 4.5, including additional part. Then let's check macroeconomics. Briefly discuss moving averages. Here we are on the business cycle under features underpinning forecasting. Moving average is the tool used to analyze changes that occur in series of data over a period of time. So let's go and give you 2 marks. It is calculated to iron out minor fluctuations and reveal the trends in the business cycle. That gives you 2 marks. The data given can be used to calculate moving averages for the business cycle for the past 3 years. It can even be for 7 years or 6 years. It depends with the question that is being asked to you. Others will ask you to calculate for months. So there must be a flexibility here. Moving average is the analytical tool used to forecast the trends of economic performance. And then also it is the statistical data or data series used by economists, businesses, and government authorities to predict the future economic performance. We continue with the moving average. By using moving averages determined from the given data, economists can get the clear picture of the general trends of economic cycling or business cycle. To calculate moving average, quantitative and qualitative methods are implemented or used. Quantitative method is used on mathematics, while qualitative method yields research, assumptions, and probabilities or projections. Qualitative method is also known as judgmental method. And then we continue. Briefly discuss appreciation of rand using the changes in demand, meaning here you draw the graph. So there's 4 marks for drawing and 4 marks for for explanation. So if the currency appreciates, automatically there must be a decrease in demand of the currency or increase in the supply of the currency. In this situation, we see the decrease in demand for the currency, which result to the excess supply of the currency. That can lead to the currency appreciating. So graphically, you can see that originally there was a demand in there, and then the supply originally equilibrium was at 17. So we're paying 17 rand to afford about $100. And then when the the demand for rands decreased, the supply remained high. That resulted to the drop or to the appreciation of the rand moving from 17 rand to 20 rand, to 12 rand. So here we use indirect approach, which means as the amount decreased from higher to lower, that's an appreciation. As the amount increased from lower to higher, that's a depreciation. be able to discover that and always remember. Appreciation is the increase in the value of the country's currency in relation to another country's currency. And then appreciation is caused by excess supply of South African rand. If our rand is oversupplied or is excess supplied, that will mean our rand will appreciate or be stronger. The decrease in the demand for South African rand from D to D1 decreases the amount of rand payable for dollars. Appreciation occurs because of market forces. And then how can the government use incentive to encourage industrial development? Remember those 8 incentives we spoke about back then. A developing program that will ensure that proper skills are given to the labor force and cover certain minimum of companies' trading cost. And then providing business support program to help improve delivery of small business support to small business and enterprises, availing grants to small and emerging businesses, providing tax-free grants to investment and industries, providing foreign investment incentive, strategic investment program. Okay, we continue with the discussion questions. Why is it difficult for South Africa to grow in the global markets? So we know that as the South Africa we are developing, so we cannot grow easily under global markets for the following reasons. The country is the main exporter of raw materials, which have low monetary value compared to finished goods. So as we sell our natural resources or raw materials unfinished or unprocessed, that means they just have a strategic value. We sell them at the lower cost. And then South Africa's manufacturing sector has supply constraints or supply challenges, which deprive its capacity to produce. Our manufacturing sector, secondary sector, find it difficult to produce and supply more goods and services because it is faced by supply constraints. High cost of production creates unfair competition for local industries in foreign markets. So as we produce at the higher cost as local businesses, we find it difficult to be competitive in the global market because some of them are highly subsidized by their governments. Less government intervention with production and export subsidies make it hard for local businesses to compete with heavily subsidized foreign businesses. We continue. Infant South African industries find it hard to compete with multinational industries. Remember, if the industry is multinational, that means it's highly developed, can be found anywhere across the world, which has an advantage of economies of scale. If we talk of economies of scale, we mean the firm can produce more goods and services at the lower cost per unit and sell them at the lower cost. That will be economies of scale because they specialize. There's a specialization for those multinational industries. While we are infant industries, which are still lacking capacity to produce, they're not highly subsidized. They not compete without government protection. Tariffs are too heavy for small industries which are not subsidized. So there are so high tariffs imposed by foreign businesses to our businesses and our goods that are exported. So we find it difficult to be competitive in the global market. International exposure requires huge capital. So it is difficult for our businesses to expose themselves easily abroad because there must be high capital for marketing and advertising. Other countries have competitive advantage in production, so South Africa fails to compete on the international market with the said countries because they have what we call a competitive advantage. So any other relevant response is accepted here because this is a higher order question which is open for your idea, but then it must be relevant. Then we move to the section C training. Let's check. Essay structure is obviously given. It will be provided in a question paper, so I won't dwell much on it. Then introduction is 2 marks, and then we go further. We have the main part, the body, which has the main part of 26 marks, and then additional part of 10 marks. So it will be provided to you how you should answer. And then we have also conclusion, which is 2 marks. Remember, conclusion must be higher order response. Then you go back to additional part, which is a higher order questioning. You must ensure that as you answer in point form. As you answer in point form, give the minimum of 5 full points. Full sentences. Do not list because listing there will guarantee you obtaining only maximum of 2 marks. And then essay writing principle, essay are arranged through subheadings and headings. Ensure that you provide headings before you explain. Don't just explain without providing headings because you will forfeit marks. Remember, the heading provides you with a better structure to be able to discuss what is relevant. And then use the point form rather than paragraphs when writing an essay. That is important. Remember the IMAC. IMAC stands for introduction for 2 marks, main part for 26 marks, additional part for 10 marks, as well as conclusion for 2 marks. That gives you 40 marks. And then remember 8 is to 18 principle in the main part. For listing subheadings and provision of examples, you get your 8 marks. And then Also, 18 marks is for content discussion. So the content knowledge and depth discussion of the concept has the maximum of 18 marks. And then we continue approaching section C. How can you approach section C easily? Do not write an essay that has not been asked. Please do not write an essay that has not been questioned in your exam. We know that some of you bring the essay that has not been questioned because you have only chosen it from the beginning of the day until today. So please ensure that you answer the question that is in the examination question paper. Be able to list subheadings, headings and subheadings for each essay. This is a better strategy because if you are able to list headings that are relevant, you will then be able to get at least 8 marks for listing. Then you go back now, you define or describe each heading that is provided in there. If you listed 8, then you describe each heading. That gives you about 16 marks. So automatically you have 24 marks. So it is important that as you prepare for your essays tomorrow, you know subheading, you know headings, you know subheadings. Then be able to describe those headings. Because your main challenge is when you start an essay, you create that thing of a burden in your shoulder to say this thing is difficult. But if you can start by listing, after listing, you describe, after description, you add info, then it will be easy for you to master all of your essays. Have a brief description of each subheading for each essay. It is important that you are able to describe each subheading provided. That will guarantee you marks if you answer in full sentences. Discuss the relevant content on each subheading. Do not have the lost content. Let the content be on the relevant subheading so that you can get marks, because at times we find the content subheading being lost, or you find it subheading is wrong but the content is correct for the particular subheading. Avoid doing that. Do not list points in the additional part, but write in full sentences. It is important that to avoid listing points, because if you list in the additional part, you will be getting the maximum of 2 marks. You list points or providing examples, you guarantee yourself to get 2 marks over 10 if ever that listing is correct. So avoid listing, answer in full sentences. Note that the listing of facts in additional part will earn you maximum of 2 marks if ever that listing is correct. Even if you listed 10, we clump it together and give you 2 marks if ever they are all correct. Then these are paper 1 essays. For macroeconomics, we have a list of essays discussed in detail markets within the 4-sector model in the circular flow. This is one of the easy essays that we have seen in our June examination. That's when we talk about the likes of the factor market, product market, financial market, as well as the foreign exchange market. Remember, we have those 4 subheadings, but you can add up to 9 subheadings, because if you talk about the the product market, that market alone has the consumer goods market, capital goods market, and services market. Those are subheadings. And then you go to the financial market. That market has the money market as subheading, as well as the capital market as subheading. So really you are getting to the maximum of 9 subheadings in there. And then we talk about the factor market. In there you can create a subheading for the likes of labor market and land market. Then you discuss. So having to be able to list these headings make things more easier for you. For instance, goods market. You define this is the market where goods and services are traded. You go further. The goods market is not directly involved in production, but act as a mediator because it brings goods closer to consumers. You get 2 marks for that. You go further to say it can be subdivided into consumer goods market. You define it. Consumer goods market refers to the market where consumer goods and services are traded. The consumer goods market consists of durable consumer goods. Define them, give example. Semi-durable consumer goods, define, give example. Non-durable consumer goods, define, give example. You go to the capital goods market. You define capital goods market refers to the market where capital goods such as machinery and equipment are traded. That gives you 2 marks. Then you go further, okay, to talk about the services market. Services market refers to the market where services are rendered. That include computer repair services, cell phone repair services, transport services, communication services, etc. You also tell us that intermediate goods are also found in the consumer, in the goods market. So by doing that, you have a lot of information, a lot of answers that you have obtained. You go to maybe financial market. You tell us that financial market refers to the market where financial securities are traded. Financial market is not direct in volume production, but act as a mediator between participants. Then you tell us that it is subdivided into money market, which is the market for short-term loans and deposits by the private sector. Securities found in the money market include trade debentures, treasury bills, also borrowings and savings. It is controlled by South African Reserve Bank. You go to capital market, the market for long-term loans and deposit by the private sector, controlled by Johannesburg Security Exchange. Securities found in there include mortgage bond. So it's more easier for you to approach it says if you understand subheadings. Go further to foreign exchange market as well as the the factor market. Remember, a digital part is flexible, so it can be any higher order question within the relevant topic if it's a circular flow. Discuss in detail the new economic paradigm, explain the smoothing or explain the smoothing business cycle. I will come back to this one. Discuss in detail features underpinning forecasting. This was in term 1. So remember, in there you define either features underpinning forecasting, or you define forecasting, or you define the business cycle. Then you remember listing all of those subheadings. There are we have 9 of them, which include leading indicators, lagging so we normally say the LL, CC, Melter. What does that mean? Leading indicators, you get 1 mark to define, refer to the indicator that changed before the economy changes. Then you go further. Lagging indicators, it refers to indicators that change after economy has changed. We have not yet discussed further and given example, we are just defining. Coincidence indicators, refer to the indicator that change at the same time as the economy changes. Then you go further to the composite indicator, they refer to the group of leading indicators together, lagging and coincident indicator together to benchmark economy. And then moving averages refer to the tool that is used to analyze changes in economic performance over a period of time. Extrapolation refers to the use of known information to discover the unknown information or data. The length, it refers to the movement from peak to peak and trough to trough. And then what trend line is the line that shows the direction of the economic activities or show where the economy is heading. And then amplitude, it measures the descent from peak trend line to trough and trough trend line to peak. You know, by doing all of those things, these things I've been mentioning, you simply get your essay concluded. You don't have to overload your mind because there's a lot that you have to do for this economics. So ensure that you look at your subheadings, ensure that the description of each subheading is correct. Then start counting your marks to obtain that 26. Avoid writing the essay for 3 pages. You are wasting your energy, wasting your time. You will never complete your question paper. Ensure that you stick to the facts and then complete those facts and move on. And then we continue. Remember, a general part can also be flexible. If ever this essay comes in, that simply tells you that a general part will also be the part of what we call the business cycle. Discuss in detail the main objective of the public sector. In there, we are talking about economic growth, full employment, economic equity, exchange rate stability, as well as price stability. So when you get there, no subheadings first, you have listed them. Now define economic growth refer to the increase in productive capacity of the country. That gives you 2 marks. You add another point to say economic growth is measured through real GDP, which is converted from nominal GDP. Then you go to full employment. It occurs when all economically active population that have been looking for jobs are employed. So you define EAP. EAP refers to people that are aged between 16 to 65 or 15 to 64. And then you haven't given the further information. You are just giving us the basic info. You go to economic equity. Economic equity refers to the economy that does not display huge income gap between rich and the poor. And then you go further to say inequalities are measured through a Lorentz curve as well as Gini coefficient. There is a lot of information to provide, but you are busy with the basics. You go further to say you are talking about maybe price stability, refer to price that do not increase or decrease over time. Unstable prices or volatile prices result to economic uncertainties, does not create a good environment for investors and consumers. We haven't given enough info, but we are just giving the basic info for descriptions that give you marks. You go further to exchange rate stability. Exchange rate stability refers to exchange rate that do not appreciate or depreciate over time. You define your exchange rate, which is known as the value of one country's currency in relation to another country's currency. You tell us that the South African Reserve Bank uses monetary policy and fiscal policy, monetary policy as the main tool to stabilize the exchange rate. So by doing so, we are moving within the right direction. You go back to feed information, but you have already achieved 20 marks in your main part, plus a listing of 5 points or subheadings. So you need to make it easy how to write an essay. A digital part will always be flexible. So also be open. In this case, it will be the question relevant to the public sector. Discussing detailed reasons for public sector failure, link them to the poor public sector provisioning. We had this one in our June examination, provincial and national. So remember, in this one, we make it easy to remember subheadings. We say, manage South African public services before liability. Management failure, structural weaknesses, apathy, politicians, special interest groups, bureaucrats, and lack of motivation. This will make things more easier for you to remember all subheadings, and then you start to discuss. If you talk about management failure, you know that in there we are talking about incompetence of management that is deployed to do some jobs for the public sector. If we talk about structural weaknesses, we talk about using conflicting ideas within the public office, which can lead to inefficient provision of public goods and services. Apathy, here we talk about the issue of ignorance, whereby public servants, they don't care about having to deliver public service because they know that they will never be held accountable. Politicians, here we talk about people that are elected, they just appear to be voted for. After they've been voted for, they disappear and come back again when they want to be voted for again. So in this case, these people increase public expenditure that cannot even be accounted for. And then special interest groups. These are the very much powerful groups in the economy or society that can influence government decision making in terms of income and expenditure. Bureaucracy. Here we talk about following rules and regulations beyond control within the public sector, which delays provision of public goods and services. Lack of motivation. Here we are talking about public servants being not acknowledged for the great job that they are doing. They are not well incentivized when they have done the great job, but the government only focus on pinning them for what they have done wrong. So it's easy to get this thing done. You just have to know subheadings and know the main points. The other things will follow automatically because your mind will be enjoying what you are doing. Discuss in detail the reasons for the foreign trade, both demand and supply. So remember you mind the gap where we say for the demand reasons, people in Witbank prefer coffee. For supply reasons, we say rich countries like to send chocolate. How do you go through this? For the population size, demand reasons, you have already introduced your essay, by the way. You tell us that the increase in the population of the country increase the demand for goods and services. As the demand for goods and services increase, it might happen that those goods that are demanded, some of them are not produced local, they are produced abroad, because local firms are faced by supply constraints. And then, level of income. The increase in the level of income for the country's population increase the demand for goods and services, for which some of those goods and services are produced abroad. And then, the wealth of the population. High level of access to credit facility increase the level of wealth and result to people demanding more goods and services. And then as they demand more goods and services, some of those goods are produced abroad. And then a preference and taste. We know that when people in Witbank prefer coffee, these are preferences. So remember that people do not prefer the same goods and services in terms of styling. So the access and the exposure to social media make it more simply for people to be exposed to different goods and services that are not even produced in their own countries. That has resulted to the increase in global demand. And then consumption patterns, we know that they differ from a person to person and from a country to country. Rich countries normally demand luxury that are not produced in their own countries at times, while with developing or underdeveloped countries normally demand necessities for which some of them are produced abroad. Then we go to supply reasons. Natural resources are not evenly distributed across the world. Climate conditions differ from a country to country. Labor resources, developed nations are well developed in terms of their labor. So it produces more goods at the lower cost per unit and sell them at the lower cost, which creates specialization. Technical development, we know that developed nations are always having advantage over of technology that allows them to specialize and produce more goods to sell into the other global markets. Specialization, we know that countries tend to specialize on goods where they have a competitive advantage. Capital, we know that developed nations are having advantage of capital over developing nations. Then a general part will be flexible. We continue. This is question 6. Discussing detailed export promotion. In this situation, we discuss methods or approaches, reasons, advantages, as well as disadvantages. Discussing detailed arguments in favor of protectionism. We have 9 of them, so you just have to remember subheadings and be able to do what? To discuss them on. And then discussing detailed supply-side approach in promoting economic growth and development. Here you just have to remember your fiscal policy, your monetary policy, and those other measures that are provided in there as a supply side. As a demand side. Discussing detailed South African growth and development policies and strategic initiatives. Here we talk about 10 policies that include RDP, GEA, EPWP, ASGISA, GIPSA, NGP, also EPWP, NSDS, etc. So here, how can you make this thing more easier? If you are talking about RDP, Reconstruction Development Program, it is important for you to know objectives of RDP. Like RDP is a development policy that was formed in 1994 to ensure that South Africans have access to basic needs. Some objectives include implementing democracy, and then ensuring that people have access to proper housing and shelter, ensuring that people have access to proper electricity, water supply or purified water, etc. Ensuring that it emphasizes on the demand side, improving the economy of the country as to improve standards of living for the population. Addressing imbalance of the past. So if you know those objectives, then you can do evaluation if ever the policy has been successful or not. Same thing applied to GEA as well, as it was formed in 1996 to complement the RTP. So GEA was formed to promote export-oriented economic growth, to achieve 6% economic growth, to ensure that public sector objectives are achieved through macroeconomic stability. So you need to check out those things so that you can be able to do evaluation if ever you need to do evaluation. Same thing applies with EPWP. It was formed to ensure that there is improvement of skills, labor-intensive job creation, as well as improvement of living standard for the people in the country. So you must be able to know if those things have been implemented in the country and be able to evaluate. We can count them on. Then you can discuss in detail South African initiatives and endeavors in regional development. I will come back on this one again. Then discuss in detail economic indicators, which include money supply indicators, interest rate indicators, foreign trade indicators, productivity indicators, and then what else am I leaving? Inflation indicators. Those are indicators. And then discussing detailed social indicators that include demographics, nutrition and health, that include malnutrition, services, education, health, etc. Then the essay section C under macroeconomics. This is the example. This doesn't mean that this essay will appear in the examination tomorrow. I'm just citing an example for you under macroeconomics. Discussing detail the economic paradigms or smoothing business cycle. Additional part, why is the price stability important to prevent extreme fluctuations in the business cycle for 10 marks. Then the essay is out of 40 marks. Then let's check introduction. Obviously, I told you define paradigm or business cycle. I won't repeat myself. You define your business cycle or you define your economic paradigm. So a paradigm is the mixture of government policies that include demand side and supply side policies when smoothing business cycle. Or paradigm refers to the new perspective of eliminating uncertainties on the use of fiscal policy and monetary policy when smoothing the business cycle. Or you define the business cycle as the model that illustrates the increase or decrease of economic activities. Then we continue, we go to the main part there. Demand side policies, these are the policies. So it is embedded on monetary and fiscal policy that focus on aggregate demand. So these are policies used by the government to influence aggregate demand. And then monetary policy. Then when the level of economic activity is depressed, the South African Reserve Bank can use expansionary measures to stimulate economic activities. An expansionary monetary policy is implemented when the economy is in recession to increase the money supply. It can be recession, can be depression, can be trough. The aim is to increase money supply. Repurchase rate can be reduced to make borrowing cheaper and encourage spending by the household. When the economy is overheating at peak, interest rate can be increased to discourage money supply and credit creation. These can reduce aggregate demand. We continue. The central bank increased the cash reserve requirement at peak to increase the vault cash and decrease the money supply. When the economy is underperforming, which can be downswing, the central bank can decrease the cash reserve requirements to increase money supply and consumption spending. Central bank can sells government bonds through open market transaction or open market operations into the open market, which occurs between central bank and commercial banks, to decrease consumption spending during the peak. To increase economic activities from the economic slump, remember economic slump is when the economy is down there between depression and trough. The central bank buys bonds through open market transaction from open markets to ease the quantity of money. So we continue. The central bank use moral persuasion or moral pressure to instruct commercial bank to behave in a manner that is highly desirable based on the current economic conditions. Tightening moral persuasion or moral pressure decreases credit creation and aggregate demand in the economy whenever the economy is at peak or prosperity. To stimulate the underperforming economy at trough or downswing, the central bank relaxes or ease moral suasion or moral persuasion or moral pressure to allow more credit creation in the economy. This increases the consumption spending since economic stakeholders are always tempted to spend. They spend money they don't even have. Fiscal policy. The government implements expansionary fiscal policies to stimulate economic activities from downswing. Increasing government spending has a stimulus effect on the money flow, job creation, and aggregate demand in the economy. The government can increase infrastructure investment projects to increase cash injections and economic multiplier. The increase in wages and salaries for public servants can positively affect their disposable income and their consumption spending. To dampen overheating economy, which will be then at peak of prosperity, government can cancel or postpone existing infrastructure projects to decrease level of income in the economy. The government can decrease taxation during the bad economic conditions, which can be recession or depression or trough. So decreasing taxation, that can be direct tax, such as personal income tax, increase the disposable income and consumption spending. Decreasing an indirect tax, such as value-added tax, decreases the selling prices and result in high consumption spending in the economy. The state can increase taxes to slow down an overheated economy. If ever economy is overheated at peak of prosperity, taxes can be increased. Inflation. The increase in economic growth increases income per capita and disposable income. The increase in the level of income increases aggregate demand in the economy. So if the aggregate demand increases further than aggregate supply, or when supply is not responsive to the change in demand, the prices will be increasing. And the consistent increase in price level is known as the inflation. And then unemployment. The demand side policies are effective on stimulating economic growth. So the demand for labor will increase due to economic growth, and that leads to reduced unemployment. A decrease in unemployment results in an increase in inflation because more people are employed, which causes an increase in demand for labor. The relationship between unemployment and inflation is illustrated through the Phillips curve. Then there is your Phillips curve being illustrated there. So Phillips curve shows the relationship between unemployment and inflation. So I won't go through the whole thing. I will have drawn a Phillips curve on our data response. And then we'll continue with the supply side policies. Supply side policies, these are the policies or economic policies used to trigger aggregate supply in the economy. Improve supply side policies increase productivity and stimulate the supply for goods and services. The increase in aggregate supply means that firms can produce enough goods and services as per consumers' aggregate demand. Then let's check a decrease in cost of production or cost of doing the business. If production costs decrease, more goods and services will be made available at all prices. Aggregate supply will increase, and then government can implement measures to decrease the production cost of businesses, both directly and indirectly. So lower cost of doing the business benefit businesses since they result in high production and aggregate supply. We continue. Cash incentives include subsidies for business to locate in areas where there's high level of unemployment and poverty. It also includes the support given to local exporting business to enter the global market that include production subsidies. Incentives such as direct and indirect subsidies to encourage export can also decrease the cost of doing the business. Then production subsidies have an effect of increasing productivity by businesses and increasing aggregate supply. And then we continue. Infrastructure cost. So under cost of doing the business, we also talk about cost of the infrastructure. High cost of infrastructure are huge disincentive for businesses. The cost of transport, communication, and water and energy in South Africa are very high, and they are controlled by the government. The government can make a huge contribution to the reduction of cost of doing the business or cost of infrastructure so that businesses can be able to produce more goods and services. Administrative cost includes inspection, reports, on the application of laws, regulations, and bylaws and tax returns. All of these costs add on the cost of doing the business and are relatively high and should be reduced in South Africa. Deregulation is the removal of unnecessary laws and restrictions that make it difficult for business to enter the market because of admin cost. Relaxed tax regulation can decrease the administrative cost of businesses. Then we continue improving efficiency of imports. Taxation. High taxes are a disincentive in the economy. So high personal income tax rates are disincentive to work because they decrease disposable income. High rates of corporate tax are disincentive to invest because they decrease profits enjoyed by businesses. High indirect taxes such as VAT are disincentive to produce because they increase selling prices. So here the play is very simple. We play that government should lower these taxes so that there will be more productivity. Capital consumption. Replacing capital goods regularly creates opportunity for businesses to keep with the latest technical development. Depreciation allowances are subtracted from gross profit before taxes are calculated and decrease tax liability. In South Africa, companies are allowed to write off computer equipment every 3 years, and some machines can be written off every 5 years. Commercial vehicles are disposed after 5 years. As the capital loses its lifespan, its productivity decline, which lowers aggregate supply. So that means our machines that we use are the part of the wear and tear. As we use them, they lose the value. So it is important for firms to invest further on the new technology so that they can keep up with the productivity. Human resource development. The quality of workforce can be improved by improved healthcare, education and training schemes, and mobility of labor. Healthy labor force is productive, so it is necessary for labor force to have access to proper and quality healthcare services. Well-skilled workers are productive and efficient. They produce more goods and services at the shorter period of time using relatively less resources, which increase aggregate supply. Free advisory schemes or services. They are given by the government to local business that locate to areas where there's a high level of unemployment and poverty. Local exporting businesses are also beneficiaries of free advisory schemes or services. Free advisory schemes promote opportunities to export and establish business activities in foreign countries, research and development, and statistical information. Others provide special help to SMMEs to establish, manage, and perform. In South Africa, the government is involved in all of these services. Then improving efficiency of markets. We talk about deregulation. So deregulation refers to the removal of unnecessary laws and regulations that prohibit the functionality of the market. Address labor and other resources market inflexibilities. Remove price, import, and exchange rate controls. Compared to developed countries, South African government is very much involved in the market. Too much government intervention prohibits the entry of foreign direct investments into the country. The regulation of some laws can encourage and attract more investments into the economy and increase aggregate supply. Competition. Competition encourages the establishment of new businesses in the economy, so it attracts foreign direct investments or FDIs. Remove power abuse or imbalance by monopolies and opportunity for collusion by oligopolies among the market participation. The Employment Equity Act promotes healthy competition, which improves businesses in the market and prevent restrictive practices. So we call this one the Commission Policy Act of South Africa. The SA Commission and then Commission Tribunal as well as Commission Appeals Court ensure that markets perform and remain competitive without any restrictive practices. And then we continue. Leveling playing field. Here we say private companies cannot compete with public enterprises because they receive financial support from the government on the national budget. Public enterprises have legislative protection and supported by the government through tax system, which makes competition between the public and private sector completely unfair. Privatization should be encouraged to improve the efficiency of markets. Corruption and nepotism must be eliminated. Additional part, the price stability is important because it contributes to high levels of economic activity and employment. It improves transparency and price mechanism so that people can recognize. And then it allows people to make well-informed consumption decisions. It encourages foreign investment to promote economic growth. It helps to allocate resources more efficiently. It avoids unproductive activities that are sometimes used to protect one against the impact of high inflation. It avoids risk of deflation, which makes it more difficult to implement policies guarding against it. implements inflation targeting by reducing distortion of inflation or deflation, which exacerbates the distortionary impact on the economic behavior of tax and social security. Keeps interest rate unchanged to ensure continued growth in the economy without big fluctuations. Adapt the cash reserve requirements, which will compel banks to limit credit or money circulation. It prevents and then the arbitrary redistribution of wealth and income because of unexpected fluctuations. And then avoid risk of deflation. I think this one is a repeat. Then that was 10 marks. Then additional part can be flexible as long as it's the higher order. Example can be economic stability is achieved when mismatches between demand and supply are cleared. The simultaneous increase in aggregate demand and aggregate supply result in a greater market output without inflationary effect. That was the example under new economic paradigm as for the business side or macroeconomics. Under economic pursuit, let's look at the example. Discussing detailed South African endeavors or initiative to regional development. If you are economic pursuit team, this is your example for today. How successful is the government on promoting industrial development? 10 marks. Let's look quickly because of the time. Introduction. Regional development refers to the policies which are aimed to increasing economic livelihood of specific areas. Or you define industrial development, it will still be correct for 2 marks. And then main part under the body, special development initiatives, SDIs, is a policy to promote sustainable industrial development in areas where poverty and unemployment are at the highest level. It can be defined as a link between important economic hubs and regions in the country. The intention was to grow SDIs mostly through private sector investment. The state was to enhance inward investment through the granting of incentives. The public-private partnership promotes the economic potential of underdeveloped areas. Then we continue with SDIs. In public-private partnerships, a private business may provide the capital to build the factory and to buy raw material and employ labor, while the government provides the capital to for the infrastructure, e.g., roads and water provision. There are 2 types of public-private partnership which are compensated differently: unitary payments and user fees. And then the SDI involved an interdepartmental investment strategy that the Department of DTI is a DTIC, by the way, Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, and Department of Transport, DOT, are leading. So it is led by 2 departments, which are DOT and DTIC. We continue. Government's industrial policies strive towards balancing between openness and in promoting local competitiveness by opening up the domestic economy to international competition. DTI is, Department of Trade and Industry and Competition, is the driving force behind industrial and spatial development. Relies on networking with other central provincial government departments, IDC, and then parastatal like Telkom, Eskom, and Transnet, and a research institution to plan, monitor development. Key policy remains sustainable industrial development in areas where poverty and unemployment are at the highest. Then we continue. SDI focus on high level of support in areas where socio-economic conditions require concentrated government assistance and inherent economic potential exist. SDI's goal is to fast-track investment and maximize synergies between various types of investments. And then we continue with objectives of SDIs: to develop physical infrastructure such as roads and harbors, to stimulate economic activities in underdeveloped areas, to create employment and stimulate economic growth in underdeveloped areas, and then develop inherent economic potential in underdeveloped areas, and then attract private sector and foreign direct investment, then establish public-private partnership, which are known as triple Ps. Industrial development zones, ITZs. So they are purposely built industrial estates that are physically enclosed to seaports and airports, and then they are duty-free import areas. Then this strategy was aimed to making export internationally competitive. They focus on creating jobs and promoting exports. We continue. Goods produced in these zones should be exported into foreign countries, not be sold locally. A service provided from outside the economy in the area should be stimulated. An ITZ offers world-class infrastructure, enjoys zero rate of VAT on supplies from South African sources, and reduced taxation on some products. And then we continue with ITZ. ITZ were located to benefit investing companies through support, accessing to transport for export purposes, and then products produced for export by waiving import duties, and then skilled training for employees by providing subsidies. And then we continue with ITZ. Each ITZ is designed to do the following: provide location for establishment of strategic investment, promote and develop links between domestic and zone-based industries, enable exploitation of resource-intensive industries. And then we continue. SEZ, remember, ITZ current in place. Remember, 6 of them in South Africa, special economic zones. It creates the basis for the border range of industrial parks and provides economic infrastructure to promote employment. Geographically demarcated area where specific economic activities has been identified to be developed. These areas may enjoy incentives such as tax relief and support system to promote industrial development. We continue with SEZ. There are plans to reduce tax up to 15% as an incentive to attract new industries into SEZ. The aim of creating SEZ is to attract the following: only new businesses, and then also businesses which are developing a new product line, and then businesses which are expanding their volume. And then the DTI, Department of Trade and Competition, has indicated that the existing ITZ, where special tax incentives do not apply, would be graduated to SEZ. And then we continue. Corridors. Remember that SEZ are known as the the development of existing ITZ, because SEZ have a broader scope than ITZ. SEZ have huge or wide range of incentives over ITZ. SEZ can be found anywhere in the country, but ITZ are only located nearby seaports and airports. Corridors. Corridors in South Africa are special areas that offer specific advantage to mining, manufacturing, and other businesses. The advantage also include the presence of existing infrastructure and the specialization of the product or services. These corridors are development areas within South Africa and the development priorities of all development agencies. DTIC provide help to support, in support of development corridors, e.g. the Maputo corridor that start in Gauteng and extend through Maputo, on Mpumalanga to Maputo port, offers an opportunity to the transport industry. And remember, there are 2 types of corridors: corridors within and corridors beyond borders of the country. Government has promoted industrial development by doing the following: implementing GEAR, which focuses on promoting growth in the economy, although it has not been successful because of real GDP growth is not at the expected levels. The New Growth Path, NGP, which focuses on improving certain skills which would attract global businesses and ensure long-term economic growth, has not seen a decrease in the number of people that are unemployed. The National Industrial Policy Framework, NIPF, as an appropriate policy within the best practice, although hindered by the unemployment problem. We'll continue. Spending huge amount on improvement of infrastructure through SDIs, for example, maintaining, improving, and expanding infrastructure, access to suitable or modern or reliable, effective, efficient infrastructure and services. The creation of jobs was not enough to reduce unemployment. Implementing ITZ, although some ITZ growth has been slow due to incentive not being attractive enough to establish businesses. Introducing SEZ to address the negative elements of the ITZs by providing additional incentives. We continue with the additional part. Promoting small business development that has been reasonably successful due to improved access to finance, capital, and has promoted entrepreneurship as well as the efficient and competitive markets. Promoting regional development, although it is still uneven because it is still concentrated in 4 major metropoles. Any other relevant response is accepted as long as it's the higher order response and in the full sentence. Maximum is 10 marks. Remember here, if you list or give examples that are correct, you get minimum of 2 marks, or maximum of 2 marks. Conclusion is flexible. This is an example. It is the ultimate responsibility for the government to ensure that proper and effective policies and policy direction is given on the entire development of the country. Every area in the country should be considered for development and growth. The industrial sector is earmarked as a safety net for millions of jobless people in rural areas. Then any other response is accepted for 2 marks. Then we'll go to the last one, which is the preview. Our next lesson will be on the 24th of September 2025, 14:30, the time 2:16 hours, paper 2 revision. So meet me there. We will be trying to train you and prepare you for paper 2. I believe this lesson will help you a lot as you prepare for tomorrow's examination. I thank you. Goodbye.